Thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar, Putting STEAM into an Early Literacy Program, sponsored by Houghton Mifflin Hardcore. Our presenter today is Lee Scott. Lee is an early learning and supplemental education specialist with more than 25 years of experience in program and curriculum development, early childhood education services, children's media, professional development, and assessment of young children. She was one of the founders of CuriosityVille, a digital learning world for children, and is the chair of the Goddard School Education Advisory Board. Lee was a senior officer and business developer for Primrose Schools, Sylvan Learning Systems, and Connect with Kids. She developed HMH's Bound for Success, as well as programs in online learning and children's entertainment. Lee launched strategic partnerships on a variety of family-oriented projects with National Geographic Society, Scholastic Publishing, Discovery School, and Houghton Mifflin Hardcore. Lee has been featured on CNN Headline News, Huffington Post, and Parents.com. Lee will do her presentation for us today, and then we will have time at the end to take questions. If you have a question, please feel free to type it in the question box that should be on the webinar toolbox on the right-hand side of your screen. Over the next few days, probably next week, you will receive your certificate of attendance by email, so keep an eye out for that. Also next week, we will send out a link to where you can find a recording of the webinar. So now I will hand it over to Lee, and she will start her presentation. Thanks for joining.
Well, thank you, Bethany. I'm tired just listening to all the things you listed that I do. That was fun. But today I really want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is putting STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, into early literacy programs. And I'm going to talk about what educators and families are facing in today's world of early learning, since it's changed so much since I began in this industry. I love the statement here, curious from the start, because I think it really says it all for our next generation. Every generation of young children are naturally curious, and it's up to us to support and nurture and develop and encourage their curious nature. But today's children need programs that help to build what we call 21st century skills, using both online or digital platforms as well as hands-on learning, which will never go away and will always be very, very important. But these skills go beyond just reading and math to develop executive function, creativity, and cognitive flexibility. We need to ensure we tap into their natural curiosity to develop their interests and skills in science. That's so important for their future. Also include engineering, building and developing things, trying to figure out how things work, inventing new things, technology, of course. Many of you, I'm sure, have tablets and smartphones, and you see those toddlers with them, as well as our 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds. And then art and design. So those little scribbles and drawings mean so much to a child's future. It sounds like a tall order for us, but I think we do it every day. So let's take a look. Over the past 5 to 7 years, news feeds on the internet, education blogs, and of course your own state education policies have talked about STEM, and that's science, technology, engineering, and math. Now early educators are being required to instill a love of these subjects early in life. But how do we do that? It isn't really anything new, so I don't want any of you to panic, but it's being more purposeful about them as we guide children in exploratory play. For example, it's included in the quote in this slide. It's what we're already doing. Sherry Killian has some wonderful ideas about how to instill this in our daily activities. In addition to the STEM skills, we now see that we've added arts, and I guide you to the Rhode Island School of Design STEM to STEAM initiative, Art in K-12, a key to building a strong economy. I love this because art and design are a key part of that creative invention that's important in science, technology, engineering, and of course using those critical math skills. So if you Google STEAM in education, you will now find many school districts and their websites listing what they've done to adopt this approach. So let's steam it up. Isn't it fun to play around with words? The job of the future for our young children today are really in the STEAM areas. And even if a child pursues what we call a non-STEM job, he or she are going to need those skills to work in a global, collaborative, and inventive environment. We need to begin when the children are the most curious, which are our little ones, and we need to build a foundation that influences that curiosity throughout life. So let's provide a structure in which we build their natural inclination to explore, build, and question. There's an exciting, powerful link between STEM and early childhood. The new research on brain development has shown the brain is particularly receptive to learning math and logic between the ages of 1 and 4. These skills are as important as learning letters, sounds, colors, shapes, and numbers for school readiness. The question is, what are the specific skills, and how do we integrate those into our program? So what are STEM skills or STEAM skills? So I was asked this question actually in preparing for the webinar, and they really go beyond content. It doesn't mean that we abandon the way we teach or even what we teach, but that we develop an approach that makes connections for children in these areas of learnings. So the skills in each of these domains could be applied to the other areas. So in science you have inquiry, prediction, observation, and questioning. In technology, you have production, research, and looking at how things work. But we could take art and design, and those skills could be a part of technology or engineering. Art and design have expression, planning, organization. That easily could go into any of the other skills. The categories are helpful in planning and creating a blended approach, but it's the skills I really want to focus on. Not so much science, technology, engineering, art, and math, but all of those other skills that you see here on the screen. Those are intertwined, and we call that a blended approach, but these are the things that I think our children need to develop and build from for their future. Really, really important. So let's look at STEM in early learning, or STEAM in early learning, excuse me, and the 4 things that I think in terms of the classroom, what we can do to weave these in a purposeful way. And think about what you do already as we're going through this webinar today, because I want you to pat yourself in the back, because I bet you're doing it already in many, many different approaches throughout your day. The first one is play and learning. We have these 4 key elements. We want to include not only free play and provide enough time for free play, and I'm a huge proponent of children learning through play and having that in our early learning programs, but I also love guided play, and we're going to talk about that more in a moment. The second centers around storytelling and narrative. I think that this is an excellent way to make connections for children on science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. They can use this through the characters that they love. You can build connections through activities from the story, and it really does help make those connections. And also it's so important because we want children to see that words have meanings, that books have meaning, and that this helps build their comprehension skills along with these other critical skills. The third is, how do we make this happen using a blended approach throughout the day? So I don't want to teach each thing in a vacuum or introduce each thing in a vacuum. Now we're going to have science time. Now we're going to have math time, as we did traditionally when I first started teaching. The final element to me is very, very important, because the research that we have shown in most recently is around family engagement, and I've done quite a bit of work on this recently through the Goddard School and with National Geographic, really trying to approach how we help parents get involved in learning so far beyond just coming to an open house or, you know, the bake sale, but really getting parents involved in what their child is learning and what they can do at home. So let's take each one step by step. First, let's talk about free and guided play. Research shows that play is fundamental in human development. It's essential to integrating STEAM skills into your program, because after all, if we go back to that word curious or curiosity, it's that free play when I'm curious as a child and I get to explore how high can I make this block tower. That's a pre-engineering skill. What if I added a few more? That's a design skill. if I can create something that looks cool and still holds up. So free and guided play work together, and they make a great combination for introducing STEAM skills. So the free play is we provide materials for the children to play with, and the children pick and choose. They explore, they test, they practice, they rehearse, all kinds of things. And then guided play is when kids really think more, and the more they think, the more their little wheels are turning, to quote Roberta Gollenkoff, and the more learning sticks, as she says. Research shows that giving kids materials doesn't get them as far as having them interact with adult and peers who follow their lead, and we generally introduce information. So this allows children to transfer and take what they've learned outside the situation and apply it to new activities. We all learn more when we're active. You guys do too. Probably taking things from this webinar and into a workshop is even a better way for you to learn some of the points that I'm making here. It's our job to help children make these connections by setting up an environment that includes free and guided play. So just doing that, just making some changes in your classroom where you purposefully think about free and guided play, you will be integrating STEAM into your approach, because it's by that inquiry, making predictions, building, thinking, testing, all of that truly are the core of what STEAM is all about. Let's take a look at the second element, which is the storytelling and narrative. I love this. There's an expression that my friends get a kick out of where I say, give me a book and I can teach from that book all day long. And I can actually teach from a book all week long. And I love stories. When we were creating Curiosityville, the characters meant so much to all of us because they really drove what we were doing. They became alive for us. Catherine Nelson, a developmental psychologist, stated that children are guided through storytelling experiences to recognize patterns in language, play and manipulate the language, and it also supports the acquisition of phonemic awareness. But I go beyond what Catherine said, because we all know that to be true, and her research is excellent on showing us how to do that. But it also helps children learn about emotions and social behavior. And those things like self-regulation and working memory, as well as collaboration, are critical executive function skills that are important to inventing, which is a science skill. So really, these characters give children a framework for developing these skills. Connections to characters such as Curious George help children learn about how things work, build vocabulary, and develop meaning. The books you select from your classroom should include topics of nonfiction and fiction and cover a variety of interests. These first books and stories could be part of your STEAM program, and you can just start with what you have in your library now. Curious George is a riot because if you just take that one book, Curious George and the Dump Truck, think about all the STEAM skills you can teach from that one book. This is the one where he follows the ducks to a park. He dumps the, climbs up in the dump truck, and dumps the sand into the pond and creates an island. I can't get more scientific, technology, engineering, arts, and math in any one book than that one. It's just amazing. And it also teaches important social skills of, I think sometimes with Curious George it means a little bit of naughty, but we also can teach those valuable lessons as we're explaining Curious George to the children. So one way to begin for you is to create a STEAM library of at least one book for each week, or even if you wanted to start slowly and do it for a month. The book could be about a bug's life or an inventor. Begin with a story and think about activities that you could create from there. Follow with the questions asked by the children to use as your guide. Set up play areas that features items from the story. For example, if it's about the dump truck, get out blocks and trucks and put them in the block area. Set up a sand table with different sized containers so the children can see if they can create an island and how many containers they need to create the island. Add items to count in the math areas that the dump truck later will dump. So you can see how easily one book can do the same for you and blend early language development, basic reading skills, and STEAM skills from just one story. And I've put a few examples here on the screen. National Geographic Kids has an excellent, on their website, has some excellent ones for you. And of course, there's lots of ebooks using storyboards or builders. So try it out. Try it for a month and maybe do, you know, 1 or 2 books. And I think this will help you get into the swing of adding STEAM into your program. Whoops, let me go back there so you can see what I had on that slide. Sorry about that. So obviously, you know, I'm a lover of Curious George and National Geographic books, the ebooks, story builders, and then encouraging you to test it out. Give it a try. So now I've talked about the first 2 elements. Let's look at the third, which is integrating within everyday activities. The best programs, whether digital or hands-on, help create links for children to what they read, write, play, build, and create. How does this all work together? It isn't difficult. It's all about observing what the children are doing, thinking about what they're interested in, and asking questions that support critical thinking. A lot of the questions that I ask when I'm playing with children, and I want to take it further, is I don't ask why very often. I ask how, and I ask what if. So we go back to the dump truck, and I might say, well, what if the dump truck put 6 blocks on it or 5 blocks? What's going to happen? What do you think? And the child starts thinking, oh my gosh, the dump truck might fall over because these are too heavy. So I ask a lot of, you know, what if? And I ask about like how. How did you create that tower? How did you think to put that together? When I ask the question, the child reflects back about what they were doing and provides different answers for me that help me guide what we're going to do next. Children also learn best when information is presented in a variety of ways, and children are free to explore ideas throughout the play and interaction. So I use stories and characters. I build on those stories in all kinds of things. I could do it outdoors, for example, and use the skill of observation. I want to kind of cultivate that in my children that are in my classroom and say, okay, I'm really going to focus on helping these children learn how to observe. Let's go outside and see how many different kinds of leaves we can observe or rocks we can observe. This is costing me nothing, and yet I'm doing a wonderful activity around the skill of observation. And then for older children, I could even add where we write labels and put them on the different objects that we see in the outdoor classroom or playground. And then I want to make sure that in our daily activities, which you probably have already built into your schedule, you probably have whole group time, which is your circle time, and then some small group time where you're dividing up and working on a task or project together. And make sure that there's individual time as well. And by that I don't mean that you have to physically do one-on-one, but that you set up an environment where the children can work one-on-one together in the things that they're interested in. Again, just tapping into that curiosity, you'll be developing a good STEAM program. And the fourth element is a critical element, and I think this is harder for us to do because we are so busy. And so maybe we just add a sentence or two or a book suggestion to our daily report or our weekly report that we provide for parents to get you started. Because the early homeschool connection is powerful, and it's crucial to a successful and developmental experience for all children. Our research shows, and this is through the Yale Child Studies Center and elsewhere, and 0 to 3 I think is the organization where Dr. Kyle Pruitt has provided me with some of this information. When parents and schools trust and collaborate with each other, children do better academically, behaviorally, and socially. Parents, we have parents at the most eager time in their child's learning process. So this is a magical time. The children are eager to learn and they're curious. They have no predisposed opinions about learning yet. They just want to absorb and play and explore. Well, think about your parents in the same way. They're anxious. They want to play with their child. They want to do what's best for their child. And so we have them at a great time. I'd much rather work with a bunch of parents who have young children than those panic parents of high schoolers. And so we can really help them make connections of what to do at home and what their child is learning at school. We offer a few ideas in the Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Curious World website in our parent tips. And we actually even developed an idea for each area of STEAM for National STEAM Day. So it's really easy for you to do. All you have to think of is maybe one learning area a week and provide a quick at-home activity in your weekly report. So for example, you could say, for technology, try an internet search for a favorite song, share that song with a grandparent on Skype, or learn to play a new educational app, something really simple. Take a book and share a book list and say, we're reading Curious George and the Dump Truck this week. Play with the dump trucks that you have at home or build with blocks. Really keep it simple, but again, just a simple 1, 2, 3 sentence tip can make all the difference to those parents. Here's another one for math. Take a walk outside. Talk about what you see with your child. Count how many yellow leaves you see, how many big trees they are, how many red flowers in the yard, or maybe gather a bunch of leaves and sort them by size. Something that a parent can do in 5 or 10 minutes with their child will make a world of difference in developing those critical skills that we've talked about before. So those are the 4 elements. And why I don't want you to panic and think that you have to do every one of those, I think that I wanted to keep it really simple to show that it's easy to incorporate any one of those, and you're on your way to really making those connections with literacy. Because the thing about early literacy and early language is you need to talk a lot. Talk a lot about what you see with the children. Have the children ask questions. Talking and listening, those 2 things alone, along with singing and reading, I think are really, really important to bringing these skills to light, but also developing those crucial early literacy skills. So now that we have the basics, I want to take a look at 2 case studies of programs that we've developed with all of those things in mind that I've just talked about here at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. And I'm going to go fairly quickly through the products because really what I want to focus on is what they do and give you information of how we've applied those 4 elements so that you can do that as well in your classroom. So these early learning resources are designed through Houghton Mifflin Harcourt to support families, educators, caregivers, administrators, to help nurture, teach, and raise children from infancy through age 7. So the products really focus on, the 2 that I'm going to show you are really for children 3 to K, so preschool, pre-K, and kindergarten, but also the other product goes up a little bit into 1st and 2nd grade. HMH is committed to putting children on a path to school and life readiness while promoting lifelong learning, and again is that wonderful word curiosity or curious, inspiring curiosity. So the 2 programs incorporate all the things we've been discussing. They're literacy-based, they integrate STEAM and 21st century skills. We've included some digital learning because we know that there's a lot of pressure on you out there to do appropriate technology in the classroom. And so we want to help you with that. And also, how do we track and assess children and connect with families and include hands-on learning? One of my greatest fears, although I've been a big proponent of technology in the classroom, but it's like the shiny object, and one of my biggest fears is that we forget about that hands-on play because that is truly critical in these early years. So let's look at the first program. This first program is called Bound for Success. It's a unique early literacy series for young children in preschool through kindergarten. It's really appropriate for your 36 months, preschool, entering preschool, pre-K, and perfect for kindergarten. It incorporates many of the elements of what makes a great STEAM and literacy program that we already discussed in this presentation. In Bound for Success, we connect the core skills of reading with 21st century and STEAM. And what we did is we basically did, as you can see here, Curious George and the Dump Truck, we basically took 36 of our favorite books. And what I mean by our, we received information, from our teachers, from children, from parents. What are your favorite books? And we came up with a list of 36 so that we could put my statement, I can teach from that book all week long, into practice. And really wanted to focus on STEAM and 21st century skills. So the narratives around the characters really drive what we're teaching. So it goes beyond just a bunch of books to really develop school readiness and these family connections. So some of the books, like you saw in the previous slide, and I'll just go back for a second, The Giant Jam Sandwich. Talk about a book that has so much engineering, math, collaboration, science about the life of bees and what they do. It's a wonderful book, and it's beautifully illustrated. Feast for 10 is another one. You can teach so many different skills from Feast for 10, never mind just the math lesson that is in the basic skills. But there's also a wonderful social studies component within that book. And of course, we've talked about our buddy Curious George and his dump truck. So they support not only language development, because it is around a narrative, but we have built into these concepts all of the areas that we've just talked about in terms of 21st century and STEAM. So each book has a card, and this card you can see a little bit on the screen here. But we've tried to use materials that are typical in your classroom, so there's nothing really additional that you have to purchase or build or develop. And we really tried to think about what your classroom looks like. So we did whole group, small group activities. We also have correlated them to specific learning areas. We also have a vocabulary, and the program is correlated to many of the early learning themes that you already use, 10 core learning areas, so that can easily fit into your lesson plans or any curriculum that you're using. And the activities, we've written them to help you with a guided play approach that we just talked about earlier, rather than formal lessons. And the books range, we've also included The Great Kapok Tree and some classics like Five Little Monkeys and Three Billy Goats Gruff. So they're a lot of fun and very engaging. We also included in this some things for your learning centers. So for example, you can see in the center of the screen on the right here. So what could I do around this particular book on blocks and building? What could I do at my science table? And here's another thing that I could do with blocks and building. Usually the cards have 3 unique learning centers. This particular one, blocks and building, just really helped us with this book. But then we also have vocabulary. And if you really want to go crazy around the book, we've added 3 extension activities. I show you this because it might be easy for you to do some of these things with some of the books that you have in your library already. And that would help get you started. So we've also included in this product something fairly easy for you, and that's a take-home sheet for each book. Each handout tells parents about the story for that week and provides some simple activities that are easy to do. This makes a real seamless home-to-school connection for you. But as you can see just, slightly on the slide, it's, here's 5 things that you can do with your child in like 5 minutes. That's all you really have to add to your daily report or your weekly report for parents of a suggestion, and they'll feel like they're getting support from you in terms of how can I help with my child's learning. So Bound for Success, the teachers we've spoke to that use this product love how easily that it helps them incorporate literacy in STEAM. Of course, the children love the stories, they're classic favorites. And the parents really appreciate the simple support. Parents don't have time for long activities. And so what they really like are these 1, 2, 3, sentence suggestions that make them, help them feel good, but also we want them to be really joyful kinds of things that they can do with their children. The next product I'm going to briefly talk about is Curiosity Ville. And the reason why I use CuriosityVille here as another sort of case study or example is that it is an online learning platform. So this blends your digital technology, online learning platform with a lot of hands-on interactive activities that are teacher-guided, or what I would call guided playful experiences that connect to a series of characters, themes, stories, and skills. Your administrators will like this because it does have a tracking of student progress component and easily integrates with any curriculum and covers all of the early learning standards. So here's Pablo. He's my buddy. He's adorable, and he comes to life in CuriosityVille with a group of friends. And here are Pablo's friends. So we have Jack, Rosie, Joe, Ruby, Olive. All of these characters have an environment that's based on reality. So they have a realistic classroom, environment that the children can play in and explore. So we try to make the connections from reality to the also connections we know in research that characters really do help guide children through learning, and they're very important. And you know this from Sesame Street, you know this from Clifford, you know this from Curious George, and now you'll know it through Pablo and his friends. We integrate STEAM in this program in CuriosityVille and 21st Century Skills, along with the basic functions of reading and math, as well as collaboration, self-regulation, and working memory. Again, we like to use research, and so this product was built on a learning laboratory of really how children learn. And the best way to teach children is through combining, not just having an app that children play with, but combining those games with hands-on lessons that focus on early literacy and STEAM. So the hands-on lessons are really, really important. So this is really unlike what, you go to a typical app, the child just plays, but the teacher really isn't a part of it. And I think it's really important, if we go back to our old friend Vygotsky, that guided adult is crucial and critical in this learning process. And if we go back to what we thought about at the beginning of this webinar with Dr. Golenkoff's piece on guided play, it really is essential. And so this is kind of showing you how you can do both. And you can do this with any program. It's just CuriosityVille has kind of packaged it for you. Here you can see the real world of Pablo's studio. It looks like you could walk into a studio and really realistic to the children. And the research found, like in Sesame Street, this is really important. It's not completely everything animated and everything fanciful. It's real world. And so as the children go, they play games, and the games could be simple. They're typical games that you and I have played, such as flipping bottle caps and seeing if they're matching, like in the Old Maids game. Or there's a tangram game, which obviously helps with math and patterns and spatial relations, but then also a science game to help children put body parts together and build a body and know that, the two arms go on the side and the two legs go on the bottom, all with activities blending early literacy with these core skills as they develop vocabulary and reading comprehension as we work through. Here we go. So for you, and I'll just briefly talk about this for a second, for you, everything's in one place. You can choose an activity, if you see here on the left-hand side, between offline, and I can't click on it because this is a photograph, but you would also see the hands-on activities. So you could pick from either or. And again, I show you this because this is what you can think about as you're developing your lesson or your plan for the week. How can I integrate some of the things that the children are going to play, no matter what online games you choose or activities you choose? If they're playing on this, how can I connect it to something hands-on that we're either going to do together as a group, or that we're going to do in small group, or that I'm going to set up in the learning centers throughout the day? How do I blend that? So I show you this to really show you how this blends together. But one of the things I want you to think about is then how do I track progress? And so I want to make sure that in my day, and I'm sure you do this through some management system where you can observe and track what the children are doing. Make sure you think about that list of skills that I've talked about throughout this webinar of inquiry, design, exploration, testing, all of those kinds of things. Don't forget about observing those pieces as well. And then again, as in any product, we're trying to think of how can I make it easier for you as a teacher to connect with parents, because with your busy day, it's pretty exhausting to figure out how we can connect with parents. So once you give parents access to Curiosityville, they'll see the progress and activities that the children are doing both online, and then they'll have some suggestions based on what their child is doing of what they can do at home. And again, these are kept simple and easy for the parent as well as for you, the teacher. So here's the cast of characters. And you'll be able to use Curiosityville really to manage your assessment standards and progress for the children, but all in one place. But most importantly, it's really about showing you an example of how you can do online learning, hands-on learning, early literacy, and blending STEAM without having your head explode. And it's really all of these things that I've talked about today are really designed to focus on that child's curiosity, or all of your students' curiosity, and their love of learning, and start building from there. As stated at the beginning of this presentation, these two programs not only support early learning, but demonstrate the ways to integrate STEAM effectively. Remember, we talked about playing and learning in STEAM skills, story and narrative to make connections, thinking about how you can integrate it throughout the day, and connect to the home. So I suggest you start with what will work for you and build from there. Don't try to do it all. For example, it could be as simple as switching up your circle time or story time a bit to include a focus on story and interactions around STEAM skills. So for example, bring in some more nonfiction. I found that I observe in a lot of kindergartens and pre-K, we really aren't as purposeful as we probably should be in integrating nonfiction books with fiction books. Children love both. So, don't think that they're boring, those nonfiction books. The photography alone will captivate the children. And remember that these skills aren't subject-based, but we're talking about the skill. So we can include a basic skill. Let's just take prediction. So this week I'm going to focus on predicting. So what can we do to predict what would happen in a story if we changed up the ending and just did that playful conversation with children? And so you're using a STEAM approach right there. I talked about going outside and observing nature. And that for the older kids, maybe they would make labels or come back and write a few sentences about what they saw. So it's most likely that you already do these things. So now you need to get credit for it, especially if you're getting pressure from the administrator to incorporate STEAM. But you can also expand on them by thinking about how each of the things you do relates to a STEAM skill. There we go. So, to recap, putting STEAM into the early literacy program, encourage curiosity, focus on free and guided play, intentionally look at those skills. And so I would go back to that original slide that I had that lists the skills, not the subject or topic areas of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, but what skills are we really thinking about? And then go back into your classroom, and I bet you could find 5 books right away that you could teach from, that you can develop these ideas. And from that, maybe 5 little things a parent can do, and you've got 5 weeks of program right there. And all of this will help to inspire a love of learning. So I'd like to stop here and take some questions from the audience. And I'm going to use Bethany as my guide because I haven't actually been paying attention to any of the questions. Bethany?
Thanks, Lee. That was great. Yes, we have some great questions, and let me just pull them up and we'll get started. We are so busy in the classroom. How can I do this within my learning centers?
That's a great question. I get asked that a lot. And I would start by taking one or two learning centers. So I would start maybe, I think a math center is really easy, because if you have a child doing sorting and playing with shapes and things like that, you have already started to conquer that math area, but also art and design, because children can, what can you create from this stuff? And now that we've sorted it out, let's say, you ask the children, let's try sorting. How do you want to sort it? Do you want to sort it by color, shape? What do you all think we should do? And get suggestions from the children. That really starts them thinking by asking these questions and encouraging the children to initiate a little more. And it's really hard with this generation. I will tell you that learning centers have become more important in this day and age in a preschool or kindergarten or pre-K environment than ever before, because children are so used to having things done for them. And it drives me crazy. I have just here where I am here, children don't even know how to with Velcro their shoes together because somebody's already doing it for them, for their little laces. I really want, and these are older children, so I really think that our learning centers, if we ask questions, and again, if you go back to what Dr. Gollenkoff was talking about, is just don't give them the materials. Give them some encouragement around it and ask questions about how they might use these materials. And just start with one learning center, and then you can easily see how you can expand it to the others. You don't need more stuff to do this. You just have to think about it in a more purposeful manner. And you're probably doing it already anyway. So one of the first things I would say is go around and think about your lesson and pat yourself in the back with stuff you're probably already doing that easily integrates STEAM into your program and connects it to vocabulary building and phonemic awareness and comprehension.
Great, thanks, Lee. Another question. How do I make sure I have all these skills in a program? It seems overwhelming.
I know. I'm exhausted just talking about it. I agree with you. So what I would do is go back to that slide. Let me see if I can actually go back to that slide. No, I can't. Don't worry about it. It's the slide where I actually list, and I think we can send that to people, but we have the slide that lists under science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, all of the skills. And I would kind of think about, okay, I'm doing an activity on bugs, and I know that's science, but how can I incorporate the skills I want to think about? So if I want to do math, how do I incorporate accounting activity as part of it? Or if I want to do design, let's think about, and I'm teaching bugs. Bugs is the theme of the week that I've been told from my director of, this is the theme we're doing, this is our curriculum in school. And so if I'm teaching bugs, but I really want to have some art and design, maybe I look at the environments that bugs live in, and the children can use art materials in the art center around recreating what would be, where a bug would live. Making brown paper and crunching it up together and poking holes in it, and it becomes a wasp nest. Whatever. I just thought that's kind of a fun activity. But just keep it really simple, but think about the skill, not the topic.
That's great. Thanks for that, Lee. Can you tell me what is the best way to get started with parents?
Yeah, I would, quite frankly, I do stories, because parents, it's very easy for the parent to get out a book and read a book to the child. So I would start from there, and I would give some books and suggestions of books to parents that do focus on integrating STEAM skills and some of the things we've talked about today. Obviously, Curious George series has tons of them, but Gossie does as well. And some real classics like Three Billy Goats Gruff. That's a wonderful one on prediction and critical thinking and all of that. So if you just wanted to suggest a Book of the Month club with your parents, I would do that, and maybe provide 2 or 3 times during that month a really simple activity around what that book is about. keep it really simple for yourself, and I think that will be easier to make that leap from involving parents in the school to involving parents in their child's learning. There's a big difference, and I really like to call it family engagement because it's not just about moms. Our researchers show that dads love to do this kind of thing as well. And so if you start a dad helping him through just by starting from the book, you're way ahead of the game.
Great. Next question. Is technology in STEAM just using a computer or tablet, or is there more?
Yeah, that's another one I get asked a lot too. Technology is about how things work and how things are created. What's going on in the back end? How do I use a camera, for instance? So if you say, okay, my director or principal has told me we have to integrate science, technology, engineering, and math, or hopefully they're saying arts as well, and how do I show to them that I'm integrating technology, and that's sort of the clinical or administrative approach to it. And then you also want to include technology because it's a great, children are going to have to learn this. I think using all kinds of technologies. So I think showing children simple things about how a camera works and playing with a camera is also integrating technology. The safe use of technology is integrating technology into the classroom. So it's not just about the game or activity that they do online. It could be showing them how a website works. So let's say you wanted to teach children about hot air balloons, and we're going to make balloons out of paper and have a great time playing around and coloring our balloons. But then we can use technology as our interactive library, where we go to the website for the Albuquerque Balloon Festival and we see all the different kinds of balloons and how they work. So that's also integrating technology into your classroom. So you don't have to be just sticking a tablet in front of a child or having them play on the interactive whiteboard or having them go to the computer station and say, okay, now we're doing technology. It can be integrated throughout any activity that you're doing.
Great, thanks, Lee. We have a lot of questions coming in about the cost of the products. So could you mention how much these products cost, please?
Yeah, they're very reasonable. We wanted to make them accessible to most centers and schools. So, for example, the Bound for Success is, Bethany, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Bound for Success is $199 per classroom?
Correct. Yep,
yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, and then Curiosityville is $299 per basic classroom, which is 25 children for a year's subscription. It's subscription-based. So yep. I'm sorry for that little bleep. My computer decided to sing to me. And then it does have a price per child base as well. But we've kept it if you have less than 25 kids in your classroom. So we've kept it really, really accessible for you because we wanted to make sure that these, critical early learning products that we've developed at Houghton Mifflin, everybody gets to play with.
Great, thank you. Another question. Do you feel like parents are familiar enough with STEAM that making connections for them would be powerful?
Oh, yeah. They probably haven't got a clue, but they hear about it. If they're reading Working Mother magazine, if they're going on parents.com, if they follow HuffPost, that's sort of, even a parent who is a parent dual language learner, they may see it and they may have heard it. They have no clue most of the time of what it is. So I don't think you need to say to the parents, I'm going to be integrating STEAM into the classroom per se. But what I think is better to say is we have this activity that we're doing, and what it's going to do is help your child learn English and learn vocabulary that you know is so important to their success in school. So you really want, and that would be to a parent of a dual language learner. Or you say, you know, one of the things that we feel is really important to help children learn to read, because that parents are cued in on that, or to help children build math skills, is that we want them to be able to use stories to learn other things. So, for example, Curious George and the Dump Truck, we're going to teach them how islands are made. So you want to talk in terms of that kind of language rather than using our education speak around STEAM and all of that. You want to just say, you know, here's what we'd like to teach this week, and here's something fun that you can do at home that will help your children in reading, math, and science. And if you just say that, the parents will be motivated.
Great. Another thing is we've all had a lot of questions on how to incorporate STEAM with children that are maybe younger than 3. Some suggested in the 0 to 3 or toddler age range. Do you have any suggestions for that?
Yes, it's wonderful, because that's where learning is messy and fun, and I love it. So in this sense, the best thing we can do for our infants and toddlers are really centered around sensory experiences. So you will be well on your way to helping children build these skills by getting messy in that classroom. So, for example, a walk in the mud in our bare feet and then making mud patterns on paper. You know, having them touch and feel and dump things. So if we read them the story about Curious George, a very simple story to my 2-year-old, I might read them part of the story in the beginning and read the stories in parts, and then say, let's all pretend we're Curious George and follow like ducks and walk in a line, quack, quack, quack. So there's lots of things that you can do that are, I would say, highly sensory, touchy-feely stuff that's so important to helping children develop these skills. When the child is, you know, dumping things out, really what you know, there's a great thing through the Too Small to Fail organization called Read, Listen, Talk, Sing, and if you just do those 4 things, you know, read to the children, talk to them, get messy, play with things, talk about what they're doing, build upon what they're doing, I think, you know, that's where you get started there. You don't need anything formal, that's for sure, but just purposefully integrate that into the activities that you already do with the children. But definitely get messy, read lots of books, and do a lot of singing and dancing.
Great. We're almost down to the wire here, but I'll ask a few more questions if we can. How about including language skills into STEAM?
Do you mean, you know, we can't ask that question, but if you mean language skills like phonemic awareness or vocabulary building or print knowledge, for example, all of that can be incorporated as we do any of our activities. So if we want to develop more of a science vocabulary, you know, talk about those things. An outdoor playground is a great place to start. You know, to use those words, labeling things, all of those kinds of things help you do that. And you're incorporating, so in that sense, I'd say your focus is on the language learning and vocabulary, so you can switch it up. So your focus is on the language and vocabulary that you're building, but your subject area could be a STEAM subject area. So how do things work? I want to build more vocabulary around science words. So perhaps we, you know, take something apart and put it back together again, and we're talking about what we're doing there, and then maybe we're going to write a simple sentence. So print knowledge, if it's children that are just learning early words, maybe they just label one word, or we do beginning sounds or ending sounds around the topic that we're talking about, which could be exploring leaves, or it could be building ramps, and we learn new words about ramp building and rolling the balls up and down a simple ramp.
Those are great suggestions. Thank you. Please expand on STEAM skills in nature, and what have you seen work?
STEAM skills in nature. Well, nature's great. So I'm going to just take weather because I know we're short for time. Weather to me is probably the most fun way to teach everything about STEAM, build vocabulary, and give the kids the cocktail party conversations that everybody has about how's the weather. So they're already building into adulthood by just being able to talk about weather. And I say that sort of jokingly, but I really mean it, because if you just take prediction, so it's sunny today, but if the clouds came in, what's going to happen to the sun? And would it be colder or hotter if the clouds came in? So there's lots of different things that you can talk about that get kids thinking about the weather. You can start a journal about the weather, so you're integrating writing skills. Even if it's labeling temperature with simple words and then eventually building that to understanding that temperature has degrees. I mean, there's lots of things. So just take weather and in nature, and how does that affect the birds? How does that affect the leaves? How does that affect whether we can go out and play or not? Really starts building all of those skills that we talked about for science. It's great for learning math. It's excellent for learning design, because we can design different things that help us predict the weather, or we can design photographs. I mean, we can take photographs, or, you know, so that element comes in it. The technology, you know, just doing a rain stick to measure rainfall is a technical tool, so we're integrating technology. And then, of course, the science, earth sciences come into that. So I've gone right down the gamut of my STEAM, and all I've done is play with weather. And, of course, you all know how to build weather, words, vocabulary, and all of the language skills of putting sentences together, and all of those kinds of things can all fall around the weather.
Thank you so much to Lee for your time today. I think this was a great presentation, really great advice and tips for using and incorporating STEAM into the classroom. And thank you everyone who was able to join us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you everyone, and full steam ahead. I knew I had to say that. Bye guys.